In November, my husband, dog, and I attended a composting session at Grace Church in the Mountains in their giving garden behind the church. It was more out of COVID-induced cabin fever that we attended. We don't have a garden, so why should we compost? I've seen composting bins costing hundreds of dollars, so such an endeavor really sounded expensive and time-consuming to me. We were enticed simply by being at a gathering on a sunny day, walking the dog, and maybe learning something new. The first part of the program was presented by Debra of the Maggie Valley Community Garden. Debra said, you don't have to have the expensive equipment, just start a pile. The only way to fail, she said, is not to start. It can be as simple or as involved as you like, and that really appealed to my pocketbook. She went on to tell the Safely Distanced group that composting produces soil, and that soil is alive with microbes that nourish plants, that nourish people, with more vitamins and minerals than big agriculture produces. Her grandma's famous fail-proof compost recipe starts with equal parts browns, such as dry leaves, shredded paper, shredded cardboard for carbon, and greens, such as vegetables, fruits, grass, and coffee grounds for nitrogen. You, as the chef, season the recipe with air, tossing it around every now and then, and moisture, just enough to resemble a wrung-out sponge. Nature is the slow cooker and can heat the mixture up to 140 degrees inside. After it cools, you have dark, rich, alive soil that's ready to spread. The Grace Giving Garden folks displayed their 3 compost bins, which were simply made out of wire and stakes with a large pitchfork to move it around. The program ended with the demonstration by some members of the Western North Carolina Climate Action Coalition on how those without outdoor space can make compost by throwing their green and brown stuff into a small plastic container with some worms who magically transform it into nutrient-rich soil. In other words, they turn it into worm poop. The red wigglers, as the devoted devourers of detritus are dubbed, are voracious and randy creatures that beget both more worms and fertile topsoil. I hear they are great for fishing. Inspired but wormless, I started my compost that day in a small plastic garbage can under my sink. I lined it with a paper grocery sack, since that's compost material too, and started throwing stuff in every day. Since COVID hit, I cook most meals, so I threw in all my fruit and vegetable waste. We drink lots of coffee, so in went the filter-filled grounds. I moved my paper shredder from my office to the kitchen and began shredding junk mail to throw in. I was amazed at how quickly I filled the first sack and subsequent sacks. I never detected any odor. When I fill up a sack, I throw it into a garbage can outside my door until I collect a few to take to my composting bins. I was amazed to read that composting reduces the amount of landfill waste by 1/3. I had no idea. In a landfill where garbage is tightly compacted, little air or moisture reaches all that compostable stuff, so it's frozen in time instead of growing juicy tomatoes. Now I have some simple wire bins so my sacks of green and brown can continue cooking with sufficient seasonings of air and water. I placed my redneck rain barrel beside it. It's a 30-gallon plastic garbage can with a hole cut in the middle of the lid. I flip it over so that the rain runs in and a wire screen keeps the mosquitoes out. I really do like projects that are cheap and simple. It makes me happy to think that one afternoon of cabin fever during COVID times resulted in a simple project that can potentially reduce our landfill waste by a third. During these dark times, I'm grateful for that silver lining, regardless of how small.